One-Eye Jacks, and I think this is part 52. We got 52 cards in the deck, and I spent some time away from making videos. I had to get away for a little while. My head was exploding, and I made a new drawing. If I can get it to expand here. And why wasn't it fitting in the thing? Hang on. So anyway, I made a new. This is sort of like my answer to Bill McNeil and his Everything Jack Nicholson picture. This would be Everything One-Eye Jacks, my little puzzle language thing that I have here. And there's a lot of stuff in here, and I'm going to let you guys look at it. And let me zoom to one side so you can see the whole thing. Unfortunately, it's not fitting in the hole. Hang on 1 second here. All right, here we go. This is a little better picture here. So I did a little One-Eye Jacks picture. This is sort of like a tribute to Bill McNeil. And there's all kinds of little things in here, like you have the bull's eye over here and various alchemical. You have Icarus, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I'll leave it on the screen for a few seconds here if you want to look at it. I wish there was a way I could send you the original because it's a much higher resolution, but there it is. And this is kind of, I think it's going to end up being my logo eventually. And so let's move this out of the way. That's not what I wanted to do. Let's move that out of the way. All right, now, this is amazing. Alan Shepard, he hits the longest golf drive on the moon. And I was messing around the other day with some software, and I was able to zoom in on this. Let me do this right now. And it's Apollo 15 we're going to be looking at, not the other ones. So you're going to be looking right in this area right here. Now this is when I turn on the software that I purchased. It's a special secret software. All right, now watch that area right there. Hold on. All right, there it is. Now we're zoomed in. So it proves that he hit the longest drive on the moon. There is no doubt now. We can now scientifically reproduce the actual shot. And clearly we know this is his shot because it has his signature right on it, right there. And the little, this is the McDivitt, the James McDivitt it leaves.
Correct in his findings.
The cuckoo bird. All right, this is this category we're going to go over here. Hold on. And it's it's part of modes of transportation, but it really deserves its own category because it's so well represented in his puzzle. So we'll begin with Apollo, and his this is his chariot. It's a two-wheeled wagon, and this is in the Overlook when Jack drives up to the Overlook in Stephen King's book. The Beetle has a two-wheel trailer that they pull behind it, and in the movie they omit it. There's no trailer, and that's we also are pointed to that as well when we see the luggage. And Mr. Ullman says, "Did they bring in your luggage?" And Jack points to the huge pile of luggage that clearly could not have fit in the VW Beetle without a trailer. So here's the two-wheeled wagon, wooden wagon, once again, that Apollo, the god of the sun, he rides this across the sky. And here are his four horses. So this begins the horses. So we'll move this. So don't forget this, Apollo and his horse. And of course we can see he has his lyra here. He's a musician. He one of his attributes is the dolphin. He has a silver bow, a sterling silver bow and arrows. And of course his golden rays and his chariot that he rides across the sky. And he's a twin to Artemis, so he has a sister twin. They're like Jungian polar opposites. So Roy Rogers is the king of cowboys. So in our puzzle, we have kings, queens, jacks. So we know Roy Rogers is in it. So he's one of the new horse clues and cowboy clues. Then we have the painting Alex Colville paints, a horse in church. He tells us that this is Blackjack, Kennedy's riderless horse, and this over here is Kennedy's gravestone. And we have our first gate. This is a door of perception. And so there's another horse. There's another Roy Rogers, king of the cowboys. It's also a restaurant, too. Like Howard Johnson's and Jimmy Dean. There's Woody Strode. He plays many cowboys, and he wears his hat sideways. And he's our high jumper. So he's our Admiral Byrd long jumper, high jumper. There's Roy Rogers again, and his horse Trigger, I believe. Here's Lou Gehrig. Lou Gehrig's nickname was Iron Horse. So when I said these categories are all woven together, they really are. And here's Iron Horse. So an Iron Horse, it has the horse in it, and it also has the train in it, because an Iron Horse is a train. So when you find Bobby Kennedy and it's, Bobby takes the train, let me leave this right here. We'll do it right in front of you. So here's the picture we see in The Shining, horse and train. And here's Lou Gehrig, first man to get Lou Gehrig's. Gives his first, last, and only speech on July 4th, the birthday of our country, the date of the Overlook Ball, and his nickname is Iron Horse, so he links right into it. You have JFK's riderless horse Blackjack. That's one of our cards clues. Here's a World's Fair stamp, and we have the Unisphere on it. We have Saddle Rock on Apollo 17. This is this massive rock here. They run down this ravine and they look at Saddle Rock, which is, this is what you put on a horse as a saddle. And I don't think I have a picture of it in this video, but on Apollo 15 there's a spur crater. So the spurs are the little metal things on the bottom of your boots that you spur get the horse to go faster. Here's Red Room, 5-time Grand National Champion, known as the greatest comeback horse in history. There's Woody Strode again, a cowboy. Here's Lou Gehrig, Iron Horse, Columbia University alumnus. This is one of our Columbia clues. That's not related to this. Oh, here we go. Here it is. So here's Saddle Rock. It looks like a saddle. This is where you would kind of sit, and this would be your little stirrup, or your little, what do you ever call it there. So these are right in Apollo. He's hiding this. Apollo, one of his attributes is he's an archer. We have Blackjack, and the oddity that November 22nd, 1953 is the day he's commissioned, and that's 10 years to the day that he's used in Kennedy's funeral. We have the flying Ford Pinto. So we had the Mustang, and we had the Ford Falcon, and we had the Ford Limo, the one-off double suicide door Mercury Lincoln Limo. So this is the flying Pinto wagon, because we're always looking for wagons. Remember, that's horse. We're back in covered wagon times, is what Jack Nicholson said. Back in covered wagon times, And then Danny goes, "Oh, Dad, what's cannibalism?" And he goes, "Oh, they ate each other up. I saw it on TV." So here's your Pinto. So we have a connection to the Blues Brothers because we have the See You Next Wednesday billboard that we saw, and it has a picture of King Kong on it, which is two kings in cards. And so this is See You Next Wednesday is a clue to Kubrick's language. So we have a Pinto, a flying Pinto, with two Nazis in it. Here it is again. Let's see. Okay, this is so we have horses. This is a horse. Okay. So we have cuckolding going on in the movie, in these movies, and this is Marie Windsor. She's a redhead. She's Queen of the Bee movies, Queen of the Bees, and this is her secret lover. She's cuckolding her husband. So this is her bull. So no, it's not an actual physical animal, the bull, but he's a bull. So there's cross pollination between these categories. I haven't really focused on that before. I just kind of assumed everyone figured it out, but. So you have a horse, and you have a bull, and you have a pinto, and you have a blackjack. Red Room, spelled backwards, murder. So the Donner Party, they trekked across the Great Salt Flats, one of the flattest places in the world. Of course, the entire world is flat, so I guess that's probably not true anymore. But so they went across there, and during the time they went across, it was flooded, so they would likely have seen those impossible, perfectly mirrored skies that we talk about. And they leave on April 15th from their journey, and they have horses and oxes and wagons and all kinds of stuff. And this is the allegory to Kennedy and the Apollo missions. You know, they were spurned on by a foolish politician who was bragging, and then we go to the Apollo missions, and Kennedy was the foolish politician bragging about we could go to the moon. Here's Cowboy in Full Metal Jacket, and this is our Orville Redenbacher sticker right here, July 16th birthday, a redhead. King of popcorn. Here we have the Burns twins, and there's a horseshoe right here. Here we have the glimpse we get of the Colville painting, horse and train. That's what we're talking about in the Colville threads. Lou Gehrig, Iron Horse, Henry Lou, Hank Lou Gehrig, Apollo, that's 4 horses. The unicorn. So if you notice, like we saw the horse, and we saw the train, and we saw the blah blah blah, and then we saw the flying pinto. Okay, and then we saw the Red Terror, which is the first commercial vehicle that was successful in Antarctica, the VW Beetle, named the Red Terror. But then we also had the Snow Cruiser, which was a rolling wheeled vehicle, but also it flew, so it did both. So we go to we hop over to Blade Runner using the footage from The Shining, their palindromes. The beginning of The Shining is the end of Blade Runner. And we see the unicorn on here. So there's a theme in Kubrick's language. We're using the monolith. We're using the Pan Am. We're using the trans lunar injection. We're using the transsexual. We're using the unisphere. We're using the hang on, let me open it. Well, I don't want to. Let me get off on a sidetrack. I'll go over that when I'm done, because it's right in the top of this document right here. But this is another horse, but it's a flying horse that has one horn. So it's a one-horn horse. So here's the Pinto wagon again. You know, and once again, the Pinto debuts on 9/11, 1977. So this has our 9/11 date in it, and it's a red Pinto, and it's a wagon, and it gets crushed. And also, I wanted to mention that the big joke about the Pinto is it was notorious for exploding when hit. I mean, you just brushed into this thing. If a truck brushed into the back of your Pinto, you were probably going home in a Apollo 1 body bag. You know, you would blow up, and the gas tank was right in here. It would blow up. So not only is it the car that blows up when you hit it from the rear, much like the 9/11 towers, which blew up, and comes out on 9/11, and it flies through the sky because it's a flying Pinto. So the flying, when you find a vehicle that rolls, you're like, okay, that's neat. But when you find the flying Pinto, you can see that it's something different. It's a different category. Like the Antarctic Cruiser was a flying vehicle that could roll as well. So Icarus could walk and he could fly. And a beetle can walk and fly. So there's a category of things that can move on the ground and the sky at the same time. Here's the Apollo 13 insignia. I don't think there's any ambiguity. These are Apollo's horses right here. I don't think it could be any clearer. We have the Lone Ranger. So this is our Admiral Byrd, his book Alone. We have Lee Harvey Oswald, A Lone Nut. We have the Beatles, the Lonely Hearts Club Band. We have Apollo. We have Lonely Crater on Apollo 15. We have, what's another one? So it's lone. So they're all lone. So if I asked you to come up with a substitute for lone, you could come up with, let's say, one perhaps, or the first, or uni, or mono. So it just turns out that all these uni, mono, first we're already using in the puzzle. And of course, I mentioned the other night that masks are being used. I mentioned about the movie Halloween. The mask in Halloween is actually a William Shatner Star Trek mask painted with white spray paint. So there's one of your masks. Then we have the Lone Ranger has a mask. Then we have the masks that are seen in Helena's bedroom in Eyes Wide Shut. Then we have the masks that are seen over Vivian Kubrick's editing station. And then we have, oh God, there's another one I'm forgetting now. We have the masks in the Masked Ball. So I'm going to make a list of these under this video, and this is a thread as well. People who wear, it's once again, it's a one-eyed Jack thing, and they're two-faced. They have the hidden face and then the non-hidden face. And there's this horse, Silver. She had the gold room and silver and diamonds and rubies and the Longines chronoscope and the Tiffany, you better start shitting me, Tiffany cufflinks pile. He's giving you all jewelers and jewelry and diamonds and gold and silver. Kennedy's silver $50. You have Kennedy's silver certificate. The silver certificate is what got Kennedy killed. They started printing money that was backed by silver, and that in fiat currency, monetary manipulation, that's not allowed because it's too stable and you can't really, it's harder to fake and rig and So the monarchies of the world, the people that rule it, don't really like to have metal-backed currencies. Doesn't really work out as well for them. They'll take the metal currencies and buy them themselves, but the proles don't get to use that. Here's the movie, Kubrick's movie, The Killing, and the whole movie, or a lot of the movies, focuses around horse racing and a racetrack, and the names of the horses. One of the horses is Stopwatch, so there's another watch in your Longines chronoscope category. And of course you have Red Lightning. So as these horses come around the track, Tim Carey shoots Red Lightning and kills the horse. So that's where one of our lightning clues. So here's Tim Carey. So here's we're going to go into horse overload right about now. This is Tim Carey, and he's in his handmade Morgan sports car with a wooden frame, and he folds his windscreen down, and he places his rifle across the hood, and he shoots the horse. And the nice parking attendant that came over and wanted to thank him for the big tip he gave him tries to give him a horseshoe. Well, he doesn't take the horseshoe, or he takes the horseshoe, and then the guy comes back, and then he insults him. He calls him the N-word. So this is one of our cracker clues. Whenever you see somebody doing a cracker act, you should look carefully at what's going on. So he throws the horseshoe at him. Anyway, after he shoots the horse, he ends up getting shot, and he dies half into the car and half out of the car. He's like he's falling out of the car. So when Kubrick says the hardest part of making a movie is getting out of the vehicle, this is one of his jokes here. It's very difficult Tim Carey's having a very hard time getting out of this vehicle in this movie. So he dies in every Kubrick movie. He's like Timmy and Jimmy, or Timmy and they killed Jimmy. No, they killed Timmy. Whatever in South Park. So he's like that equivalent in Kubrick's language. And so he dies in here in his handmade Morgan. He gets a flat tire, flat.
So the horseshoe punctures the tire. I mean, how more overt can you get? He's driving a Morgan. The horseshoe punctures it, gives him a flat tire. So, and it's got the wooden frame, and it's handmade. So let's do this. Let's get rid of this one. You know what this is. So once again, we're still on the horses. This is Marie Windsor again, and now she's trying to get part of the loot from the. She's a relentless gold digger. Is what she is. And she has very big eyes. I don't know if you noticed that. I have a category of you have. Shelley Duvall has very big eyes. Sharon Tate had very big eyes. Marie Windsor has very big eyes. And he had big eyes from Margaret Keane. Here's another clue to weddings. Where in Full Metal Jacket you hear "going to a wedding," man. So now here we are in a completely different movie, and he's asking him, when's the big day? When's the wedding date? So, you think these are all, Kubrick just needed to fill that 20 seconds in the movie. No, wrong. And so here we go. Now we start getting into some good stuff. Let's do this. Zoom in. So here's Tim Carey in the movie The Killing, and this is his handmade Morgan, and he's shooting the horse Red Lightning. So let's do this. Move this to the side. Here's the horseshoe puncturing his Morgan's tire, a horse. Remember, we have the Mustang, the Ford Mustang, and the Ford Pinto as well. And we also have Sylvester Stallone, the Italian Stallion, and Red Room. Don't forget Red Room. There's Blackjack, the riderless horse. It's a card game. Here's Cowboy, and he gets shot, and he's just about to die here. And I can hack it. So this is Kubrick. He's like, listen, the eugenics is taking its hold. It's midnight, and the star's in you. You've got to break out of this system before it's too late. Before everything, they're after your brain now. They're coming at you with the mercury. So the odds of somebody hacking this puzzle, they're going down every day. They're not going up. They're going down. The wooden car. So I do not know what kind of vehicle this is. I looked, and I'm not familiar with this. It's wood, though. I mean, it has wood all over here, wood down the side, wood over here, wood. So it might be a Ford, or it looks like it could be a Chevrolet. I can't read it, though. Irregardless, it's another wooden car. I mean, he's overtly putting these cars with wooden clues in them because he wants to point you to the Trojan horse. This is really the main goal of all these wooden clues. And also, you have Dorian Hare Wood, and Natalie Wood, and Elijah Wood, and Ron Howard Willow, and Apollo's Laurel Corona. They're tying together using in these bizarre categories, and one of them is wood. So here we have some kind of Ford or Chevy wagon, and once again, it's not a coupe. It's a wagon, and this is the character Johnny Clay, who's Sterling Hayden. Sterling Silver is one of Apollo's attributes. Sterling Hayden drives, and Sterling Hayden, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, if I don't think he's alive anymore. I could be wrong. God, I hope I'm wrong. But Sterling Hayden was a notorious drinker. Sterling loved to drink, and you can find videos online where he is just lit out of his mind, and it's a fascinating man. But he knew the Minotaur was going to come for him, so he just said, I'm going to drink. He liked drinking, so he did it. But he was really good in this movie and Dr. Strangelove. So he plays Johnny Clay, which is another stone, and he drives a car that's wood, and it's a wagon. So this is Lou Gehrig. I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. So this is his July 4th speech, the birthday of our country, the date of the Overlook Ball. Here's the World's Fair. We have the Mustang Coupe was there as well. First unibody car ever. It's a horse. Here's the 1964 and a half Ford Mercury Lincoln Continental double suicide door sedan. Remember, this is not the same as Kennedy's car. Kennedy's was stretched. It was made longer. Kennedy had no doors. Just like Wendy. Just like Kennedy had no door to get out of his limo, just like in the book, there's only a door that it's locked and Jack's breaking it down with an axe. There's no way to get out. There's no doors in Stephen King's book, The Shining, for Wendy. Now, in the movie, Jack adds a window that partially opens. Doesn't open all the way, it partially opens. Here's some advertisements for it. Here we have a Ford Mustang, and it's on the Magic Skyway. So people would get in the car. They couldn't really drive it. It was just it was on like a train track, and you could ride around here and do whatever you did in 1964. So here's the heart-wrenching scene in Barry Lyndon, where his only biologic son, Brian, disobeys his orders. So we have, in the Icarus Daedalus myth, Icarus disobeys his father's orders not to fly too high. His father tells him, listen, if you fly too high, Apollo's laurel corona is going to melt your wax and feathers, and you're going to fall to earth, and that'll be the end of you. You're all done. So Icarus disobeys his father and pays just like the Donners listen to a foolish politician and pay the consequences. Well, little Brian knew he was getting a horse for his birthday. In the movie, he was aware that he was getting a horse because somebody spoke out of turn. So he sneaks out early in the morning, and he jumps on his new gift horse. This is Kubrick's little gift horse in the mouth. I mean, this is pretty overt when you know what you're looking for here. I mean, he disobeys his father and his father and son, and so he gets on the horse early in the morning without his father's help, and he goes to ride it, and the little boy gets thrown off the horse, and the horse lands on the boy and crushes and breaks his neck right at his chin. It breaks his neck, so he's paralyzed. And so this is Barry Lyndon on his deathbed, essentially. The kid's, here he is, right? You can see his face. He can't move anything. He just has a mouth. So this is Kubrick's analogy. He felt like this little kid. He knew what was going to happen to him beforehand, and the only way he could really get his message out is this way, through this secret message language. So Barry, talks to his son, and his mother's there, and you got to watch this movie. Even without the Kubrick puzzle part, it's a great movie. And so here he is. He gets crushed by the gift horse. Another horse. So now let's go back to this picture here. We have, 1 second here. We have Tim Carey, the man that dies in every Kubrick movie, shooting the horse Red Lightning in the movie The Killing. And then we have the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album. And we have George Harrison. And right behind George Harrison, if he moves out of the way, we see Tim Carey, a shot from this movie where he's shooting Red Lightning. So when I say the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club album cover is related to this puzzle, I'm not full of crap. And here we have Bette Davis playing Queen Elizabeth. So I think it's Queen Elizabeth. I could be wrong, but I know she's playing the Queen in this. And so it's fascinating. And it's another reference to, so he's shooting a horse. So it's another horse reference. Here's J.P. Morgan. He's the man responsible for deliberately sinking the Titanic and essentially murdering 1,500 people for an insurance job. And he also parlays this. You never let a good murder go to waste. He throws in, I think he must throw in free tickets to the Titanic's maiden voyage to get the people he needs on there that weren't cooperating with the creation of the Federal Reserve. So the people that weren't cooperating with the Federal Reserve take over, mainly the Guggenheims. They end up on the Titanic, and unlike in the movie where all the rich people survive, in reality, some of these people didn't survive. So you wonder what really went on that ship. And we know it was deliberately sunk. The keel was bent. And we have another wood clue here. The keel in the ship was reinforced with timbers. They didn't have welding when the Titanic was built. They only had rivets, so they were very limited on what they could fix and what they couldn't fix. So they just used huge timbers. They got a bunch of huge timbers, and they fasten them to the ship to keep it from breaking in half. And they riveted plates on the outside of the ship to prevent it from leaking water where it had been ripped. And, I really would not call that fixed. It was dolled up for its, cheap and cheery for its maiden voyage with disaster. So this is John Pierpont Morgan. So he's a Johnny, and he's certainly a one-eyed Jack. There's no doubt about that. Anybody that can kill 1,500 people, because he needs some money, is not somebody I want to hang out with. And he's a Morgan. He's a horse. So he's a Johnny. He's a horse. He's a one-eyed Jack, and he's woven into the Titanic. He cancels his voyage on the Titanic at the last minute. He decides not to go. Says he didn't feel well. It reminds me of Larry Silverstein and his last-minute meeting with his dermatologist. And of course there were two ships, and we had 2 towers at 9/11. Here's the cast of The Killing, and we have, this is the guy that dies, Tim Carey. And this is the guy he's a professional wrestler, and he did this movie. He's the man that distracts them in the bar. This is Elijah Cook. And so these are the characters that were in the movie, and it's all about horse racing and robbing a racetrack. Here's the Donner Party. Here's their wagon. They have the horse-drawn covered wagons, just like Kennedy's flag-covered wagon. Here they are. What's the Donner Party, Mom? Here we have the Flying Pinto in the Blues Brothers. So it's a wagon and it's flying. Here's the, this is good, this poor guy. This guy was an excellent baseball player, and they freaking poisoned him. So here's a card for the day he gives his July 4th speech. Luckiest man in the world. It's sad. What could he have done if he wasn't screwed with? All right, this is where we go. Okay, we're gonna go into the Twilight Zone right now. So you have all these horses and all these, the Morgan and the Mustang and the Pinto and the Red Lightning and the Blackjack and the blah 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 blah. Right now, let's go to. So this is Blackjack, the horse. Okay. And so this is Kennedy's riderless horse. We see him in all of, this is the whole allegory of horse and train and horse and church. So let's go look, let's take a look at the horse that was in Kubrick's movie. This movie right here, this is Kubrick's movie. We want to look at the horse Red Lightning. He's shooting red. Even when they go to talk to Tim Carey, he goes, yeah, put some money on Red Lightning, right? So let's take a look at Red Lightning, the horse. Here he is. Let me zoom in a little bit better so you can get a better look at Red Lightning. See if you notice anything. Can you see it? Can you see the white dot on its head? So, hello, McFly. We got, what are the odds on that Red Lightning from Kubrick's movie has the white dot, and so does Blackjack from the Kennedy. I mean, really? Well, that's pretty weird. And of course, you quintuple this with the movie Dr. Strangelove comes out on the day that JFK dies, and then of course, Eyes Wide Shut comes out the day that his son dies, the exact day, date, and year, just like Dad. Day, date, and year, Eyes Wide Shut for John. Day, date, and year for JFK Sr. Is the release date for Dr. Strangelove, day, date, and year. And then Bobby, is born the day Jung dies. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I've gone through this before, but so we have another bizarro, Twilight Zone coincidence that both these horses have a white dot on their heads. That's fascinating. And I think the rest of the stuff in here is just stuff I've picked up. Here's the reference to Apollo and his dolphins. One of his attributes is the dolphin. So when we see the Miami Dolphins jacket in The Shining, we know what it is. Here's another references to masks. So I said the Lone Ranger has a mask. We have the masked ball in Eyes Wide Shut. We have Vivian Kubrick has masks hanging off her editing station. The Lone Ranger has a mask. And then we have the people that aren't wearing a physical plastic mask, but they're actually living masked lives, like the Joker in Full Metal Jacket. He's born to kill on his helmet, but he's got a peace button on his jacket. So, he's a one-eyed Jack. He wears a mask. He pretends to be all hard ass, and in reality, he doesn't want to be there. Which isn't anything. Oh, here's the biblical clues. Now, I'm going to put a list of them under this as well. So we had Nazareth, the rock band. We have I Want That Head So Clean, the Virgin Mary would be proud to take a dump in there. So we have Nazareth, the Virgin Mary. We have Laurel Gardens. So we have, when they did moon excursions, they were called EVAs, Eva. So you have Adam and Eva. Eva and Eve are the same thing. So you have the Adams probe, Ken Adam, Douglas Adams, Samuel Adams, Adams Golf. I've made lists of these. There's more than that. I can't, ripping this stuff off. When you guys learn this puzzle language and you go to explain it to one of your friends, you're going to start laughing because you're not going to, it's so hard to remember every little category and be able to riff them off. But here's the Genesis rock. So this is the biblical category. We have the Virgin Mary. It needs to be proud. Even the Virgin Mary would be proud to take a dump in there. We have Adam's probe, which is his penis, and Adam, the first man. We have Genesis, the first day. We have Genesis is read live on air, on television, on Apollo 8, on Christmas. So it's a Christmas clue. It's a Genesis clue. It's then we have Happy Birthday, Dear Jesus in Full Metal Jacket. I mean, he's hitting you with these biblical clues. You have the Sidewinder. You have the asp. You have the boa. Boas, actually, there's like 3 or 4 of them now. You have the Bushmaster M16. It's the Colt Bushmaster, which is a snake. You have the Catcher in the Ryegrass snake. I mean, he's giving you snakes and crawlers, the NASA crawler. So there's a biblical thread. I've listed it before. I'm getting better at riffing on it now. This is a kind of a connection to the Beatles. So you have the picture of them in the crosswalk. And in the picture, Paul McCartney doesn't have his shoes on. He takes his shoes off because he didn't want to fill Paul's shoes, but he didn't really have a choice. He looked enough like Paul where he could have a very wealthy and successful life if he agreed to it. So he didn't want to fill Paul's shoes. So here we have another scene. This is a scene in Barry Lyndon where this man is being concerned about losing his peerage from his fortune to this little boy. This is Brian. This is the little boy that gets crushed by the gift horse. So he's worried about losing his place in his family. So he takes his shoes off and has little Brian wear them. And his mother is having a concert with a musical accompaniment. And these are all the rich, wealthy friends she has. And he comes in the room and he's clomping his feet very loudly on the floor because they don't fit his shoes. So it's it's a connection to Kubrick was never accepted into any of these societies that he worked for. He was always viewed as the outsider, and there was never going to be a way he's going to be in. He was the hired hand. He was the shoe shine boy. And there's no in the movie Barry Lyndon. Barry's always trying to buy his way into a peerage. So he wants a position. He wants kind of like an affirmation that he's part of the club. And no matter how much money he spends, and no matter how many people he bribes, he just can't make it happen. And so little Brian, in some ways, represents Kubrick. He's the naive little boy, and he's going to come in and take the peerage away from, and it's not going to happen. They're not going to allow that to happen. And he gets crushed by the gift horse. So Kubrick volunteers to kill the Minotaur. He doesn't really take a good look at the gift horse. He just volunteers and says, "I'll do it. I'll fake the Apollo missions." So this is the wild child side of him. Not the manipulator side. Let's see what we have here. So here's another bird clue I've missed. So in the movie The Killing, Elijah Cook, who he's the cuckold, and his wife has been cheating on him. He goes completely nut job, and he shoots everybody, kills everybody, and then he runs back to his own house, and then he shoots his wife. He's already been shot himself, and he shoots his wife and kills her, and he kills the bird. They have a little parrot, and it's going as they're doing, they're having their conversation about the robbery and everything else, and her cheating ways, and so the bird dies. So we see a parrot. So it's we have the eagle and the falcon and the cuckoo and the roadrunner and the peregrine and the I can't rip them all off. And so you have that thread was repeated again as well. Here's another mirrored lake thing. We see the perfectly mirrored bridge abutments in this image. I keep mentioning, let's do this right here. So, this thing is so slow. So this is Harrison Ford in Blade Runner. Now remember, the end of Blade Runner is the beginning of The Shining. They're palindromes. And there's a bunch of clues. I'm not going to go into them all right now. But Blade Runner and The Shining are connected together. It's the running, walking, high jumping Blade Runner. So when I mentioned that they use these Mayan-inspired asymmetric Frank Lloyd Wright blocks. So let's go to the Biltmore, Arizona. And this little statue here is called the Three Sprites. So we have the Thiacal Sprite, and we have the Biltmore, Arizona. We have the Three Sprites. So that's a bizarre synchronicity there. And we can see right away that it's using these same asymmetric repeating Mayan blocks everywhere, just like in Blade Runner, because this is the Ennis house made by the same. So Frank Lloyd Wright designs this house. Frank Lloyd Wright makes the blocks for the Biltmore. He doesn't design the Biltmore, he just makes the blocks. So this is Kubrick's clue that other people might be using Kubrick's blocks. It's not just a one ride pony here. And what else do we have here? Here you have the Apollo 15 Genesis rock, and it's a replica. So it's not a real lunar. This is real artificial replica you can get. So these are awesome. You can order 10 or 12 of these if you need them. They're not real, but they're real replicas. So now. Wait a second. If the original was fake, if the original Genesis rock is fake, because we know it's fake because the Holland Moon rock was a petrified tree, how fake is this one? I mean, that's a fake of the thing that was fake. It's a double fake. What's this down here? All right. And I think that's it for 52. And for the picture part of it. Let me go over this one little thing right here. This is very important to the puzzle. It's another way that these are like the bigger threads of the puzzle. So we have the filly and the mare. So a filly is a young female horse. A mare is an older female horse. A stallion is a older male horse. A Morgan is a horse. A Mustang is a horse. A Pinto is a horse. A Clydesdale is a horse. We have Saddle Rock, Spur Crater. So you have filly. And then you have the Liberty Bell capsule. So you have Gus Grissom and his Liberty Bell. So we're using filly, mare, stallion, and the Mare is from the moon. They rode around their little rover on the Mare. It's spelled exactly the same way. So you have Hue City and Hue City, Mare and Mare. And then we have Buck Turgensen, which is a male deer. Doe is a female deer. A fawn is a baby deer. And then you have the goats. You have Billy is a male goat. A kid is a baby goat. A female goat is called a female goat. A nanny goat is that's like an older goat, I think. And then we have our shepherds thread. You know, I have Alan Shepard and Wayne Brazel and Mac Brazel and Apollo and the Cyclops and Jesus and I mean, there's just so much. I made a list of these before. So these are all, it's a Billy, it's a kid. This is Kid Rio in One-Eyed Jacks. This is Billy the Kid. One-Eyed Jacks is really a story about Billy the Kid. So this is a Corona, New Mexico Billy the Kid connection. One of our big ones here. I mean, you don't need to make a real big leap to go to Corona, New Mexico Billy the Kid, because one of the first movies Kubrick directs is One-Eyed Jacks, which is a veiled retelling of the Billy the Kid story. And the man playing it, Marlon Brando, his name is Kid Rio. So Kid is a goat, Billy is a goat. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then, of course, you have the Beatles. You have Buffalo Bill. You have Billy Shears. You use shears to shear a sheep. You have Billy Shepherd. A shepherd is a sheep and a shepherd. So he's using the same Billy Shepherd as the same whole shepherd's puzzle here. And then you have Jacks. So you have One-Eyed Jacks and all that crap. And a Jack is a male rapid. Jack Elam. Elam is a palindrome for male. M-A-L-A-E-L-A-M. So then, of course, you have the hares. So there's the hairballs and the Muffley Merkin and the Bush Baby and the Sea Hare Rock and the crosshairs and the missing crosshairs on the Apollo missions. The redheads. You know, this is the hair colors we're using. We're using hairballs and what kind of hairdos they have. So we're using the colors of the hair, the shape of the hair, different ways to use it. You know, you can have a sea hare rock, so that connects hair to rock, which is, you would think would be impossible, but no, you have the sea hare rock. And, you know, so it's connecting a bunny to a muff to a merkin, which is a female pubic wig, to a bush, which can be one of the Bush babies. They're the Bush Senior and Junior, which is a category. Or it could be a sea hare rock. But anyway, you get my point here. And then, of course, you have the Kubrick's ESP hairball. The cats knew when their hairballs were going to be combed. They were ESP cats. And we have the bunnies, the Playboy bunnies, the Playgirl bunnies. So we're using these, you know, filly, mare, stallion, colt. So in the cage, Star Trek The Cage, you have Yeoman Colt. She's the redhead, you know. It's using the same exact puzzle. So you have filly, mare, stallion, colt. And then you have the various different kinds of horses he's giving you. Morgan is a car, Morgan is a horse, Mustang is a car, Mustang is a horse, Pinto is a car, Pinto is a horse, Bronco is a truck, Bronco is a horse. And then all these clues to saddles and spurs and cowboy and it's getting into football, and I don't know anything about football, but I mean, we have the Philadelphia Eagles, you know, so we're being pointed to Philly. We have Gus Grissom's Liberty Bell, which is in Philly. We have the Philadelphia Experiment, which is looking like it's in this puzzle as well. We have Samuel Adams, the founder of the Tea Party. We have Samuel Adams Beer, which is in our puzzle. We have the Adams Probe. We have Ken Adam. We have Douglas Adams. We have Adam and Eve. We have the Eva, which is extravehicular activity. Eva and Eve are the same thing. We have Barbara Eden. You know, we're going to the biblical clues again here. Ken Adams. You know, it goes on and on. Douglas Adams. Adam West from Batman is in the puzzle. And we have one Adam 12. They drive a Matador. The Adams family, I think, is in it as well. These are like, when you go into the One-Eyed Jack category, this would be the everything Adam category. You know, it's going to be the Adams Probe. It's going to be Adam and Eve. It's going to be Ken Adams from Kubrick. It's going to be Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's going to be Adam West, Batman, one Adam 12. They drive a Matador. And I think, I want to say one of the guys, Randolph Mantov. Man, I got to find out about this. but it's 1 and 12 right there. You know, it's 1 Adam 12. He would love this. And the Addams family. So the woman, Marianne Stone, she looks very Addams family-ish. So I got to look into this. And then you have the Philadelphia Eagles. So Philly is in the puzzle, and I haven't cracked it all the way. But of course, Rocky the movie takes place. You know, and he's fighting Apollo Creed, and you know, you got Tony Burton and the Steadicam. So we already know Rocky is in it. And so we have Mare, Philly, old and young female. Stallion, colt, old and young male. Buck is a male deer. Doe is a female. Fawn is a baby deer. So this is how our puzzle works. So I just showed you the horse category. So that would be the Philly, Mare, Stallion, you know, Morgan, Mustang category. And also, it's also, you know, Lou Gehrig, Iron Horse, and all the other horse and train and all that. So it's one of the more important categories in the transportation. You know, we have these vehicles. You know, this whole puzzle relies on a vehicle. Sometimes it can be a Playboy bunny. You're hopping somewhere. Sometimes it can be a Ford Mustang, and you're driving a convertible Mustang. Sometimes it could be a Ford Falcon, and you're flying the Falcon in the Apollo 15 mission. Or it could be the Apollo Challenger. Or, you know, remember the Challenger has a sister car. It's the Roadrunner. And the Roadrunner has a sister car, and it's the Satellite. So you got Arthur C. Clarke's Satellite, you've got the Roadrunner and the Cuckoo family, and you've got the Challenger, Apollo Challenger. There's all three cars from Chrysler are represented in Kubrick's puzzle. And of course, one of them is a bird, which is New Mexico's state bird, and it's in the Cuckoo family. And it's also a Looney Tunes cartoon. So this is how the puzzle works. And I think that's everything I have for this one. Yeah, here's another thing. We saw in Apollo 15, I think. No, it may be 17. Oh, 17. We see house rock. They're like, oh, yeah, look at that. That's a, you know, they make a thing of it. They make a point of it over and over. Oh, look at this. This is the biggest rock we've ever seen. This is massive. Oh, my God, look at it. It's house rock, house rock. So there's close-ups of this, you know, picture of house rock. So we found Ennis House, and I haven't completed this thread yet, and I could be wrong, but I think we have a thread of houses. You know, you can have a dog house, you can have a hen house, you can have a schoolhouse, and it's very early now. But here's one I wanted to mention too. So we have the monolith, we have the Unisphere, we have the unibody car, we have Unibrow in Austin Powers, we have the Pan Am shuttle. This is the Pan Am Space Clipper. So you have Joe DiMaggio, Mr. Coffee, the Yankee Clipper, and you have the Pan Am Space Clipper. So we're clipping, we're chopping, we're cutting little pieces of Kubrick. He cut his family up into little pieces and stacked them neatly. We're stacking them neatly. We have the Trans-Antarctic Crossing. We have the Vivian Fuchs Trans-Arctic Crossing. So Vivian Fuchs does the first Trans-Antarctic crossing in the Tucker Snowcat, and he also does the first Arctic Trans-Arctic crossing in his Norg airship. So here's two different he's a double trans. And then we have Wendy Carlos Elkine, Carlos Elkine, Wendy Carlos, transgender. We have John DeLorean designs the Trans Am. This is the car that's driven in Smokey and the Bandit. And also John DeLorean makes the DMC-12, which is the car that's used in Back to the Future, and I think it's one of our first D clues. So we're looking for D. Lorian, D. Laurentis, D. Nero, and there's more of these. I can't even think of them all now. So this is one of our Italian. We're going to be using Italians. You know, like we had the Mick Reedy and Mick Cartney and Mickey Mouse and McFly. Hello, McFly. So we have the lone nut is Oswald. So mono means one. Uni means one. I think pan is a cross and trans is a cross. Lone means he was a lone nut. He was one guy. He was acting alone. You have the Lone Ranger. He wears a mask. You have Alone, Bird's book. In The Shining, this is a new one I just figured out the other day. In the scene where we see the Rangers, we see the Ranger station, and Wendy calls up and goes, "Yeah, how's it going down there? How's it?" And the guy's like, "Oh, it's going good. How are you guys at the Overlook there?" And when this happens, there's a Ranger that's on the radio, and there's a female Ranger. She's working on some paperwork. There's a male Ranger in the background. He's looking at some maps, and there's a map clue there. And of course, the Forestry Ranger sign itself moves during the scene, so we know we're being pointed to the Rangers. So what's going on with the Rangers? And then the Blue Book disappears. Well, later in the movie, when Scatman calls the Ranger station, he gets the Lone Ranger on the phone. The phone rings. The Ranger answers it, and his name is Manning Redwood. So his last name is actually a tree. It's a type of wood, and it's a color. It's a redwood. So he has an alchemical name, and so he's the Lone Ranger that answers the phone when Scatman calls. The other Rangers aren't seen in that scene. They're all gone. They went home. He's the Lone Ranger. So it's under the Lone Ranger clue, and it's very hidden. I mean, if you have to know what you're looking for to even understand it. So you have Bird's Book Alone, and then we have Admiral Forrestal, the boxer. You know, he's a boxer. He's a swinger too. So he swings when he boxes. He's got his jab and his right and his left. He hangs out with Eugene Tooney. Eugene's already in the puzzle. He's one of the Eugenes. He hangs out with Admiral Byrd. Admiral Byrd's already in the puzzle. He's in Majestic 12, and Majestic 12 becomes Majestic 11. So remember before I said the cage is part 11 and 12 in Star Trek, the only episode Eugene, he's in the puzzle as well. Eugene Roddenberry, he's the only episode he writes, the cage. And so we have, he's a boxer, he's friends with Byrd, he's in MJ-12, it becomes MJ-11 and they have to replace him. He writes his poem, Sophocles, the night he swings off his robe. He ties his robe around his neck and tries to hang himself. He swings out the window, and he writes his poem, The Lone Nightingale, a bird. So, once again, I said in Kubrick's puzzle, when you get the right clues together, it's the no-nose, redhead man who proved parallax didn't change, and he has a pet elk. So, here we go. So we have the Lonely Crater in Apollo 15. Once again, it's the lone, alone, uni, mono. And then we're thrown in other numbers. We have Herman Kahn, Megadeaths. We have the 1,000-Yard Stare. We have the Grand Overlook Lodge. We have A Picture is Worth 1,000 Words. This is the Millennium Falcon in Star Wars. This is Harrison Ford. He's going to get eaten by the worm, and they tell him, you'll be eaten by the worm and digested over the next 1,000 years. So, so you have A 1,000-Yard Stare. A Picture is Worth 1,000 Words. The Grand Overlook Lodge. The grand piano that's never played. That you also see a grand piano in the entryway to the Overlook. You get a glimpse at it. I don't actually think it's not a grand piano. You see a player piano in the front of the Overlook. The Millennium Falcon and Austin Powers. He starts out with $1 million. So you using uni and mono, he's giving you different grand. The Apollo 1. So these are the categories of the first, the monoliths. It's full of stars. They're all have something they were first at. It's the first man on the moon. It's the Queen of Screams, whatever they are famous for. And that's how the puzzle works. And that is part 51. And you guys have a great night. Oh, let me check one thing. Here's one of the pictures I keep referring to. I found it finally. So this is Vivian Kubrick. She's working out. She's making the making of The Shining, and so this would be Eagle Films, another bird, and we see the mask back here. So masks is a category, and we have the masked ball. So I'm going to make lists of all this stuff and put it under here, and that's it. Have a great night, guys. And I'm still having a problem when I try to film short clips of videos being played on the screen. Now that I have the great microphone, it starts feeding back, so I got to get some kind of little mixer board or something. But if somebody has a really good setup that's not that expensive, let me know, because I got to get something better than that, because I want to be able to play video clips and do the audio and do all this other crap. If I want to pick the guitar up and do a screaming riff, I want to be able to do it without having to worry about feedback or not having enough volume or whatever else. And this would be a little what would you do? A challenge for all the shiners that are watching this video series to see if you can figure out all the little clues on this picture. I think if you knew every one of these little clues on the picture, you would know the entire puzzle. And so that's gives you a little homework there if you think you know the puzzle pretty well. And have a great night, guys. Bye.